We're talking the Babadook today. Friend of the show,
Babadook, yeah.
Scott Eggleston is back with us today.
He's 75th show.
Right, that's why we wanted Scott on.
Oh, wow, thank you.
And thanks for joining us.
Of course.
Scott was all, we should do the Babadook. And,
Or Babadook?
Well, he was Babadook when he's walking around. And if nothing else, it's a fun title to say, Babadook.
Yeah, Babadook. Yeah.
Gene, where are you at with this one?
Yeah, I have 2 kids, and sometimes it's like an American ideal. Yeah, we get married, get a house, you have a job, you get 2 kids, 3 kids. But then sometimes, I think every parent goes through this. It's like, you're just like, what have I done? Maybe this is the wrong choice. Having kids is not a good idea. And this movie is all about kids who just go wrong. Third way through the movie, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I don't know where you people stand on spanking. But, it's like, so, and also this movie has a lot of themes. It's like bad children, stress that you just can't escape from. There's this theme of like something's in your room at night. I think that's a universal fears. You're sleeping and then some strangers is in your house while you're sleeping. Or even in your room while you're sleeping, and that's kind of, this movie explores a lot of that, and overcoming your own personal demons. Yeah, I mean, grief, there's a lot of things going on in this movie. Yeah, so do I like it? I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know, the watchability scale, like, would I watch it again? Like, some movies you can watch over and over again. Like The Ring, I love that movie, but... yeah, I just don't know. I don't know. Would I? I think, Roger, I think you hit it really well when you said that this, for people who don't watch a lot of horror, they could watch this movie and be like super disturbed, and they're like, that's the greatest horror movie I've ever seen in my life, and and then am I bashing? So no, it's good. It's good. There were some scary parts in this movie. They were legit scary. Yeah, I don't know. I'm still thinking about that.
Scott, tell Gene why this is a great movie.
I like this movie a lot. I'd seen it before, so since it was my suggestion. But yeah,
saw it for the first time last night.
Oh, so yeah, it's definitely a movie that benefits from watching it more than once, as we've talked about before. Like with stop motion, you mentioned that.
Yeah.
I just think this is a great movie. In basically every way. I really appreciate any movie that's really about something, especially a horror movie, because you can get away with a lot in horror.
Yes.
Where it's just like superficial scares, one-dimensional characters, tropey plot, all that stuff.
There's this thing, what you want to watch it? The Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey Part 2? It's like, Scott, what you just said fits Winnie... why would somebody watch that? You
can appreciate a trashy horror movie too. I'm just saying that it's nice when, because I believe, and I felt like I did this with my own movie, is that if you strip away all the horror elements, you still have an interesting movie. You still have a movie
and that's where this movie lands.
Says something. Yes.
It's
essentially it's a family drama that has a lot of horror underpinnings that are out in the front. Interesting you said, about kind of growing up in an American family and everything. This is an Australian movie, so they have slightly different views
Western
about raising
culture,
kids. But
Western culture, they share our ideals.
Yeah, but it does tick a lot of boxes for me. I mean, I'm a big believer in a great title. There's no way you're going to confuse this movie with anything else because that title is so unique.
And fun to say.
Yes.
Babadook.
Yeah, it creates kind of an interesting lore, which is, that's kind of tropey too in horror films where they create some sort of mysterious evil character, that permeates the film and disturbs everyone. But I thought it had a unique story. Jennifer Kent's the director. It feels like a fresh movie, pretty original.
First time director.
Yes, first time, does an excellent job. Essie Davis is the lead, who's fantastic in this movie. I mean, the amount of emotional baggage she has to go through in this film is quite a task.
She's a wreck.
And I'll just take this opportunity to say, I don't know what it is, but a lot of great actors come out of Australia, it seems like. I mean, they really seem to have a great actor farm down there, over there, down there, across there.
Mel Gibson.
Oh, yeah, Margot Robbie. I mean, the list goes on and on. Anyway, I thought it was a great movie. I thought it was scary at times. I mean, I'd seen it before, so I knew where the scares were coming. But it doesn't rely on jump scares.
Nope.
It's a lot of tension.
Is there a single jump scare in here? I don't think so.
Maybe one or two with some sound effects. But it doesn't dispel the tension, which I always can't stand in a horror film where they keep using jump scares and it just releases the tension every 10 minutes. And this movie does not do that. Also has one of my favorite horror movie endings of all time because it's so different than any other movie I've ever seen, which has maybe been copied since then. Or I haven't seen every horror movie, but I like this ending
Hang
a
out
lot.
with us more, Scott, and you will.
Yeah, and I mean, I know, like, I'm also not a gore hound, and this movie is not that gory. So as you said, maybe as a primer of getting into horror movies, this would be a good one because it hits a lot of it fires on all cylinders and doesn't disgust you, I guess is what I should say, except for maybe one scene.
Oh, what scene
where
was
she's
that?
vomiting the black goo.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah, she's vomiting the Babadook out.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
kind of.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So I was telling Gene last week, I'm looking forward to watching this again because I'd only seen it once, and I'm kind of where Gene is right now, where, but on watching it a second time, I appreciated it a lot more, and I really do enjoy the focus on grief, right? Because the storyline is basically the main character mother is pregnant. She's being driven to the hospital by her husband to give birth. There's a horrible accident. The husband is killed. She gives birth. And then you jump 7 years ahead, and she is still dealing with this grief. But what she's trying to do is repress this grief.
And she can't get over it, right?
Well, she's repressing it by not. There's one great line in the movie where she is talking with her sister, I believe that is, and she's like, "Why do you keep bringing him up? I haven't talked about him in like 7 years." And she's trying to just not work through her grief at all. She's trying to repress it, and that's what ultimately is manifesting the Babadook. And I liked that manifestation piece. There's a book that her son finds in the bookshelf.
Yeah, which I think if you appreciate like really good art, this book has great art.
And it is actually available to purchase.
Is it really?
Yeah.
The guy who or woman who created that creature should be commended as
again,
a
production
fantastic
designers,
artist.
unsung heroes of movies.
Right.
Yeah, it's great art.
And so I like how it's all about that grief. And the reason they make that kid so out of control because she looks like hell throughout the entire film until the resolution of the film, when she finally has learned to live with her grief in a positive way, and the connection that she has now developed between her and her son, who she's felt great resentment against for maybe blaming the fact that the husband is dead on that child. The child feels that, is acting out at school. That resolution where now she's looking good again, even though the grief is still there.
She said, "I wish you had died instead."
Right. Even though the grief is still there. And so I think it was a really good representation of how grief works in our society as an individual, right? There's another great scene where the kid is acted out in school. He's brought a weapon to school.
This homemade weapon.
Right.
He's pretty good at these homemade weapons.
A little hobby of his.
Yeah.
Yeah. Catapults and like syringe launchers. Things.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Crossbow.
And
Yeah,
so
crossbow. Yeah.
during that sequence, the school counselors are basically telling her that the boy needs to get help. They keep referring to him as the boy. She corrects them and says he's got a name. It's this, which I thought was great because how the bureaucracies work and these entities work when you're dealing with grief. They're not really that concerned about the individual. They're concerned about the greater society because they're saying, we've got to get him out of this school because he keeps bringing this weapon, and we've got to think about everybody else.
Yeah. Well,
and
that's how schools work.
Right, and I just loved how it was really showing somebody who's dealing with grief or any sort of trauma, you're kind of on your own to overcome this unless you are really aggressive in reaching out and getting help on your own. And I certainly deal with that every day in the line of work I'm in, of having to help people weave through this grief or trauma. And so there's a lot of that going on, which I think does back up the idea that this is a good starter horror movie because it's not too scary. It's scary enough, but it's also dealing with these broader themes that kind of go throughout a lot of horror movies, but not presented in such a intelligent, smart way as this one. And we'll talk about the ending of the film at a certain point here, but the ending, like Scott said, absolutely knocks it out of the park.
Yeah, the ending's great. Yeah, grief is this uniquely individual thing It's like my brother died by suicide like 30 years ago. But, it's like you can talk all you want to people, but ultimately you have to work that battle out yourself. And you got to seek help, or you have to just have great conversations, or whatever it takes for you to, but it's a uniquely inner battle. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of a journey. This movie is a journey of this woman, going through that, and along with the crazy kid. Well, I think she's neglected him. And, well, I think to her credit, she's tried her best. She is certainly a job that it seems like a very underperforming job for her. And although she has good coworkers, and this one coworker guy, he tries to form a relationship with her, but it doesn't work out because he comes over to the house and the kid is just insane. It's insane person, and the kid, she just can't sleep. This movie also trusts on sleep. It's like you just need sleep to be healthy. If you go for a while without sleep, you're gonna.
We should talk about that too. Like, why
you're a little messed
is she
up.
not sleeping? Because there's certain things in this movie that allude to the fact that she's participating in some of this grief manifestation. Like, let's talk about the book, for example.
Yeah.
If you remember, she finds this book in her house, right?
Yes.
And then
how did it get there?
It's horrible, right? It's a scary, scary book. So what does she do? Well, I think she hides it at first, right?
Yeah.
And then it reappears.
Well, the book talks about like this Babadook is going to knock on your door.
Right. She sets all the rules up for the monster.
But then if you pay attention to it and you let it in, well, you're going to end up dead.
Right. But then
the
the book reappears, and what does she do? She tears it up, right?
Right.
And throws it in the trash can.
Yes.
And then what happens? It reappears all taped up. And then what does she do? She burns it, right?
Yeah.
And then it never comes back, which in a lesser horror movie, it would have come back. But I think the reason it keeps coming back is because she's the creator of the book.
Yeah.
Because there's one line of dialogue when she's talking with her friends at that birthday party where they say, oh, what did you used to do? Well, I used to be a writer. I wrote articles and some kids stuff, she says. So I think that that's one reason that she's so sleep deprived, is because she's kind of got this double life, this kind of Jekyll and Hyde thing going on, which that book I think is evidence of, because how else would you explain that? I mean,
yeah, the book is her creation. That's a good insight. Yeah.
Well, and that you're absolutely correct, because the book is absolutely, if you look at all of the writings in the book, it's talking about grief right there, right? You let me in, I'm going to be there, I'm never going away, and it never does go away in this movie, and you're just going to have to deal with it. And so that is thank God we have the director, Scott Eggleston, here, because I wasn't thinking about it on that terms, that she was maybe the writer of it. I thought her and her son both together were kind of manifesting that, because they're both dealing with grief on different levels. The son is desperately trying to get help to deal with that grief, because there's another great scene where he's talking in that grocery store, I think it is, with that little girl and the girl's mother, and he's like freely saying, oh yeah, my dad died when he was taking my mom to the hospital and all this. And so he's talking to random people about this, where, can someone help me work through this grief?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. The kid is talking about grief, but in a way, he should not have any grief because he doesn't know the dad. I think, he's just parroting and going off the emotions of his mother.
Right.
Which is a big driving force in his life, because instead of having a life of carefree kiddom, he has to experience this ongoing grief battle that his mother puts him through, which could be the genesis of his bad behavior.
Oh, it absolutely is. But his mother has transferred that grief to him, right? So he believes that he's the reason the dad is dead, and all of that stuff. And so he's just a child. He can't process this information. He's taking information in from his mother and has no way to process that. So he's reaching out to other people, i.e. acting out in school. Somebody help me. Hey, I'm way high up on this swing set and I'm going to fall. If somebody doesn't help me, I'm going to push this.
Standing on the top bar of a swing set.
Pushing this little girl out of the treehouse. Someone help me. Look, I'm
breaking her nose.
An awesome scene, by the way. That treehouse scene is awesome.
That's a cool treehouse.
I'd like to say something about the kid, too, because one thing like you, Roger, when you watch it more than once, you start looking for other things to see. And like one thing I noticed, I had the initial reaction, of course, as you did, Gene, about the kid. I mean, he's just crazy, awful, puts his poor mother through hell. However, I did notice this time that when the Babadook first manifests itself where she can see it and it kind of goes into her mouth, I think the movie kind of illustrates, the kid changes. The kid then becomes more of the caretaker of her and becomes the more reasonable voice in the movie, which makes me think that the Babadook was kind of possessing him for that first part of the movie until it goes into her, because his whole demeanor changes.
He does.
And then he starts trying to save his mom. I thought that was really interesting because I didn't notice that before. So
You're right.
Yeah. The Babadook, I think, clearly is the metaphor for grief. You know, and the grief is, the mom can't deal with it. She throws the grief on the kid. You know, he's possessed, you know, by the Babadook. Yeah, it's a great analogy. And then she kind of, I think she's working through her grief, and then she takes it on, and it goes in her.
Oh, yeah.
You
Hardcore
know?
toward the end.
Yeah.
Really
And then
consumes
she
her.
vomits this thing up, and it's pretty gory. You know, and there's this whole sequence of voices and creaks, and your house is cracking at night, and it seems like somebody's in your room, you know, which is, but it's the Babadook, but it's her, you know, she can't deal with her own stuff. Yeah, but she has a great personal victory towards the end, and, you know, she, but like grief is an amazing thing, because it's like you can, and this movie is great because it's like, even thinking about my own life, like thinking about my brother, it's still intensely sad. I've moved on with my life, but you know, it's if I explore it, it can still, I think it can still hurt me, you know. But I put it away in the basement, you know, and it's still there. It'll never go away. It's still there.
You got to manage it, right?
Yeah, you got to manage it. Yeah,
that's what she's doing.
Yeah,
Right,
and she put the Babadook, and she won victory over the Babadook, and she locked the Babadook upstairs. Or she locked the Babadook downstairs in the basement.
And then
she feeds it.
Continues to feed it.
She feeds it worms.
I'm still not sure, the symbolism of the bowl of worms. But, but there are some, like, a lot of symbols of rot in this movie, like the cockroaches.
Right.
The worms, the house itself kind of falling apart, cracking.
It made me think, I used to live in New Orleans, Louisiana, and every house in New Orleans has cockroaches.
Yeah. Yeah, we should talk about the house, too, because, like, another thing I tried to pay attention to was, again, the production design, the clues that they're giving you. Because there are so many, like, black coats in this movie. Right. It's like that birthday party. All the women are dressed in black jackets.
Yeah.
You know? It's like, what is this, a funeral? Because it looks like that.
Yeah, it's a birthday party.
Yeah, but everybody in the whole, the police station, everybody's in these grays or blacks. They're all throughout the whole movie. The house has black or gray walls with black trim everywhere. And, you know, you see
car accident. She hits a black car. Does
that
right?
I think so, yeah. Everybody's dressed in black in this movie. Again, it's a symbol of, grieving, right? Funeral. But it's funny that, you see movies like this, and I know we've talked about this before, where the production design is so heavy-handed in some ways. Like, why would you live in this dark house? Paint the walls. It's so depressing. But it's heavy on metaphors, and that's fine. But I just thought it's kind of funny to think about that sometimes.
Well, and I liked how when the social service workers came over to figure out why the kid wasn't coming to school, but what was also going on in the house. It was a complete disaster. It was all messy and dirty, and she was like, I'm trying to clean it up right now and all this. But that's also kind of how grief manifests. You start losing the ability to take care of basic needs throughout your house. And so, things start to fall apart. You're shut away by yourself, because she was very much becoming this shut-in almost, where I'm not interacting with anybody anymore. I'm sequestering myself away, and I'm letting trash pile up, and my kid's out of control, but I've now medicated him so he sleeps most of the time. And you're just not able to process this grief, and that's kind of an end game scenario where you start sequestering yourself away and not having valuable human interaction and stuff. So I thought the movie is really well done. And I think the director did an excellent job of coming in with, I want to portray a manifestation of grief in my horror film, and she knocked it out of the park.
Yeah. Back to the house is like, I loved all the dark shadows in the house. I kept thinking about it's like, lady, why don't you just get some nightlights? Stick around, but
dark voids in the house. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's really good, and the house was large. And so there's a lot of space for, kids to explore and things to happen.
Monsters
in the
to hide.
shadows. Yeah. Yeah.
Under the bed, in the closet.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, they set it up where the bedtime ritual for that kid is
yeah.
we've got to look under the bed, we've got to look in the closet, all that
Make sure
stuff.
nothing's there. The kid is totally afraid of, those things.
And then it was hilarious when they do read the Babadook book for the first time, and then the next scene the kid's crying because, oh my God, all these monsters are real.
Yeah. I also like how the book changed too. Like when it came back, I think after it was ripped apart, it basically was predicting the future, right?
Yep.
Which was what was going to happen, with the exception of her killing her kid, but also that the dog,
her killing herself though, right?
Huh? Oh, right, yeah, and the dog, which,
Oh yeah,
I was so sad.
spoiler warning: a dog shows up early on in the film. Guess what happens to the dog?
The dog, I was
which
so
I
sad
think,
about the dog.
I thought about this. It's like in an American film, at least of old, that dog was safe, right, for the most part. This is an Australian film, and I thought about other Australian films where dogs made an appearance and then died.
Right.
Road Warrior,
Yes.
Dead Calm was another one, and those are kind of older examples. But it's just like it kind of goes back to what we were talking about, where evil lurks. The sacred targets, or animals typically are usually protected in horror movies, but not anymore. I think that's more of an old school
No, when Gene
ideal,
and I did a review of Prey, there's a really awesome dog in Prey, and we just expected at any moment the dog to die. And so we actually
The
shouted
dog
out the director
survived.
by going, thank you for not killing that really
yeah.
awesome
That dog survives. And Prey's pretty good.
Yeah.
But another thing I enjoyed about this movie was, and then this has kind of happened in other horror movies too, is that when she gets fully possessed by the Babadook, is that it's almost this kind of perverse form of liberation as far as like discipline. I mean, she starts swearing at the kid, right? And he's like visibly shaken by her words because she doesn't talk to him like that. So it's clearly not her.
Yeah, and she says, like, won't you ever just, like, shut up? You just keep talking.
Which any parent can relate to.
Right.
Those are
Which
the
she has felt this for a long time, but she has never said it. But she's possessed, and she just comes out. Yeah.
Well, there's that scene in the car where he's just like screaming nonstop, right? And she's looking haggard. And again, every parent can relate to that because you can't reason with a kid.
Right.
They just keep. It's almost it's an endurance test, for parents. Is like you just have to wait it out. Or when you put them to bed and they cry, you can't go in there and you got to let them go to sleep. And anyway, I don't know if Jennifer Kent was a mom when she wrote this, but I'd be surprised if she wasn't because she seemed to have a lot of insight.
Speaking of that kid, though, I did like, again, the Jennifer, what was her name, the actress's name?
Essie Davis?
She does a fantastic performance, like you said earlier, Scott, but I do like how they really focus on her continuing to generate as her look, right? She always looks haggard. At the ending sequence there, or the near end, she looks almost dead. She's so overwhelmed by the grief and having to struggle with it.
Well, yeah, at the end, she becomes the Babadook,
Right.
And she manifests the Babadook, and she, for a while, she is
fully,
she's
fully engulfed with this grief and unable to break through
kills
it.
the dog,
Right.
walking around with a knife, it's got to be a big butcher knife.
Yeah, because they do a flash forward where maybe she kills her child. And,
right. She hallucinates her.
Mm-hmm. And then, again, the ending sequence where you can see that she's finally dealt with her grief and she looks good, she looks healthy, she looks happy. The kid looks good, looks healthy, looks happy. And just how she's got that grief buried in the basement, but it's still there, and periodically it needs to feed, and so she's aware of that.
and she feeds it worms.
And so she
feeds
feeds it, experiences a full rush of grief when she goes to feed him, but now has learned how to deal with it.
Yeah. I like the part where she confronts her grief, or the Babadook, and she loudly refutes her control over the Babadook. And I thought for a second the Babadook would just lash out and just like give her some wild knife wound or something,
Right.
But it doesn't happen, and the Babadook, tries to be as intimidating as it can, but it obeys her.
Well, it only
And
has
backs
as much
off.
power as she gives it.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
And that's grief, right? It's only got the power over you that you choose to give it.
Yeah, and then so the Babadook backs off, and then she regains control of her life, and she starts to look a lot better. And the kid, he is better as well.
Mm-hmm.
He's more composed, and he's acting like a regular human being.
Right, which he had not been doing the entire film.
Nope.
No, and this is, and this ending also kind of goes with what I really enjoy in a good horror movie ending is that they don't have to win the war, but they have a victory of some kind. It's not.
Yeah,
It's a for a horror movie with a lot of grief in it, which is a downer for a lot of the films, really depressing. It does have something at the end you can kind of grasp onto and not feel like you just have to take a shower at the end, which a lot of horror movies kind of give you those endings.
Well, we like those kind of horror movies, Scott, but I
feel like any Saw movie.
I totally agree with you on that, where it's basically telling the audience, many of whom, if not all of them, are experiencing grief on some level, that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And if you take control of your situation, knowing that grief is always going to be there, but you can get through it, get to the other side. So it's a great ending in that respect. And I also like the fact...
But you have to take steps to face your grief.
Yeah.
You can't just...
And she goes through hell to get there,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, you can't just expect that time heals all wounds, because time does not heal all wounds.
Right.
You have to face your grief. You have to take proactive actions. You've got to do stuff to face it.
Yeah, her attempt at dealing with grief was 7 years of not talking about her husband.
Right.
And it didn't work.
Not facing it. And
Yep.
it could be 7 years. Could be just whoosh, gone, and you haven't dealt with it at all.
Right.
There's also little hints, that she does want to break away because she's lonely, right? I mean, there's several scenes that indicate that she sees the couple kissing, or she's at home in bed by herself thinking about satisfaction of some kind, and those are not those are not accidents, right? They're in there because we're trying to get to know her character a little better, how she really feels. So she wants to break away, she wants to move on, but she's just trapped.
Funny though, she is in her bedroom with the little mechanical device trying to feel better, and the kid just barges in.
Right.
Of course, as kids do.
Yeah, he doesn't knock. Boom, jumps off the bed. It's like, what?
But I think both of those scenes, like when she's in the restaurant or wherever and sees those people making out, and then also the other scene, again, was it her actually continuing to feed that grief, right? The only way for me to be satisfied is I have to do it myself. Oh, look at this couple over here that I used to be like that, but I can never be that again because my husband died. And so I was looking at it a little differently maybe than you were, Scott, where it was just more of this, I'm continuing to feed this grief, continuing to manifest the Babadook, and going forward with that kind of deal.
Well, clearly she has, like, the Robbie, the guy at work, clearly likes her,
Yep.
right? And I was a little surprised he didn't, like, reappear at the end, but he doesn't come back after he witnesses the kid.
Nope.
No, that kid
Poison
he thinks
the well.
I'm out of here.
Yeah. No guy was coming back after that.
But you can extrapolate in the future. It's just like, does he reappear? Of course he will.
She's going to be okay. I think at the end we can kind of.
He seems like a person of character.
Please don't make a sequel, Jennifer Kent, to this movie.
Yeah, no.
At least not with these characters.
She's already come out and said there won't be any sequel on her watch, and this is one of the horror movies where there is no reason to do a sequel. It said everything it needed to say. Babadook 2 would just be kind of turned into some sort of bizarre slasher.
Babadook year, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, so
it would turn into some kind of Saw.
It would just,
hostile franchise.
There's nowhere you can really go with the story. It's not
done.
Yeah.
Claws.
Which is why it's good to have control over your own material so that you can prevent studios from saying, hey, this made money, we should make more.
Yeah.
Like, did you know was a good box office?
Yeah, no, it was the Babadook is well loved by critics, well loved by audiences, made a significant amount of money based on budget. I have not talked
probably made for almost nothing, but then it had a huge return on investment.
It looks amazing. It's a great looking movie.
Yeah.
That's for sure. It doesn't look cheap. If it was, that would surprise me.
Well, and I think you believe all the characters. There's no like, oh, this person's acting is off or doesn't fit. It feels natural and normal, like these are real people experiencing real things, behaving in a real way. That can make a good story even better.
And if you ever want to wonder, like maybe how difficult it was to get a movie made, count the number of production companies at the beginning of the film. They list all these groups they had to get together to fund whatever it is. Because there's always like, and especially in a lower budget movie like this, there's like 5 or 6, right?
Well,
and
and
they just
Scott,
never ends at the beginning sometimes.
At the end credits, if you watched all the way through to the end, there's about 300 people listed for the Kickstarter.
Oh, really?
campaign.
Oh, I didn't realize
yeah,
that.
So
No.
they even went Kickstarter as well on this one. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, there you
Yeah.
go. All right. Well, good job, Babadook fans.
Yeah, I know
All right.
it was a short film originally also, so that maybe that's how they got the money, is that
Yeah,
this is what I want it to be like. And
And they expanded it
yeah.
eventually. Okay.
Yeah, she took a page out of the Sam Raimi Evil Dead book where he made that short film to get financing for Evil Dead.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, Scott, anything more about the Babadook?
No, I just recommend people to see it. I like what you said about it's a good primer, good horror movie primer. It's a good way to maybe get into horror movies a little bit because it does a great job. It has a lot to say, and it says it effectively, and it has repeat viewing ability. So that's great. Like you said, I can't really think of anything they did wrong in this movie. I mean,
Nope.
the acting's on point. It looks amazing. The directing's solid. The script is really good. It's really tight. There's no like fat in the story that I can see. It's got just enough characters, lots of compelling scenes, lots of great scenes. One thing I always tell about a good movie is that do I like to revisit certain scenes, like watch again, like how do they do this? Why was it effective? And granted, for me, a lot of action movies fulfill that desire, but this is really well made. So
Yeah. Gene, final thoughts.
Yeah, this movie is it's very like atypical movie for horror. Usually horror is much more, they're bloody, more aggressive in that sense. So this movie is more subtle. But this movie it's a lot to think about. I don't know if I might disagree with you, Scott, as a rewatchable. I don't know, because I just dislike that kid so much. But I do like how
he gets better. He gets better.
I do like how he transforms, and there's transformation for the woman as well. So, yeah, again, the movie touches on a lot of things. There's great metaphors, the Babadook, versus being the grief. So it's a lot of good things going on in this movie for sure.
Yep, highly recommended. Actually, highly recommended to watch more than once because, as I was saying earlier, I was kind of mid on this movie until I watched it the second time, and then I was like, oh yeah, I'm totally jiving with this movie now.
Okay, I guess I need to watch it again then.
But Gene,
if I watch it the second time, I'll be like, oh, I love that thing.
Now, Gene, we know Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2 is coming out.
Are you serious?
Yes. Oh, well,
man.
Scott, baby,
why are we
what's
talking
up?
about this movie?
But what are we doing next week?
We were talking about watching. There was
The Resurrected?
Resurrection.
Okay, there's also another movie coming out, I think, this week called Late Night with the Devil, which is getting significantly positive praise from the horror film community. We might want
what is this horror film community? What, does somebody call you? What?
Well, no,
at midnight on a
Worldwide.
Tuesday.
unlike, well, we're in with the horror film community, but like on YouTube,
What a community.
some of
Nobody
the
contacts me.
some of the horror movie podcast people and video people, they get the early screeners and they see it, and then they are talking about how amazing it is.
What do those?
How come you guys don't get those? That seems
What do
unfair.
those people
We're
know?
just
They
the
don't
little
know
people, and they're always afraid that we're going to rip their movie if they send it to us.
What do those people know? We shouldn't listen to them.
Okay, Gene. My point is, you might want to do a
let's
little
watch
research on that one and
No,
see
I'm
if
not
that
gonna
might
do
be
research.
something.
Well, we saw the trailer for that when we saw stop motion, right? Wasn't that in the same?
Oh, I think maybe it was. You're right.
Because it's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
Shudder. It's a Shudder produced.
Yeah.
So,
And again, throw out a hit for stop motion. I love that movie. But yeah, let's do Resurrection, and then we'll do that movie.
Speaking of stop motion stuff, the reason we didn't have an episode last week is I was in Seattle, and right now at the Mopop museum or whatever it's called down there, they have the Leica Studios exhibit there, which is all about stop motion. They had the original dolls from Coraline and basically every other Leica Studios movie. It's fantastic if you happen to be in the Seattle area. buy your admission, pay the extra $6 to see the Coraline exhibit, because that's where you're going to be the whole day. And it was really great. So plug for them.
I've been there. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was awesome. But Scott, thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We
Enjoy
will
it.
definitely have you on episode 100 when we get to there. If not, a
Hopefully not
couple
that long,
episodes,
yeah.
a couple episodes before. We always love having you on. And as always, if you have not seen his main film, Bad Bones, we did talk about that back in episode 14. It's available pretty much anywhere you get your
you can
streaming.
do a Bad Bones 2 for probably 20, Callie.
Thought about it, but I'd rather do something different.
Oh, okay.
But
All right.
definitely check out his film, and I would appreciate it if you actually paid for the movie to watch. It's like probably $3 or $4, but give the guy some money because it was a good film. And we will just catch you next time with something. It might be The Resurrected.
Let's
it might
just
be
watch
something
Resurrection. I'm halfway through it. Let's finish it.
else. Okay, then we will take care of that. So thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.